How can you achieve anything you want in life and business? And which business mistakes do you need to stop making? And how can you keep your eyes on the prize? That and so much more in today's 2-year anniversary podcast episode with my dad, the business dad. Hello, and welcome to the FastForwardAmy show, the show where we lift your life and business with simple strategies. I'm FastForwardAmy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode every Tuesday. Hello, Jos. Welcome to my 111th episode.
Merry New Year.
Papa. Welcome to the 111th episode of the FastForwardAmy show, aka our 2-year anniversary.
It's a real honor to be here. It's also a pleasure. I remember when you started with your podcast series. Well, I didn't know it was a series back then, or I didn't know your intention was to make it a series. And now we're 2 years down the road. You have 200,000 downloads approximately, or even more. That's really amazing. I really remember vividly how you started this idea, and then you said, well, I'm just going to do that. And now everybody has a podcast, but way back then it was not really a novel idea, but it was at least a very courageous idea. And you kept on going.
Mm-hmm. Did you like the idea of a podcast back then?
I didn't know what it was. Well, I knew what it was, but I couldn't envision or imagine what it would be like. And I thought, what are you going to talk about? Why would people listen? What's all this podcast hype thing? Mm-hmm. And apparently it's a fantastic success. And I want to congratulate you also by being consistent. 2 years down the road, 200,000 people having downloaded your podcasts, finding the topics, finding the time. It's incredible. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. I remember Mom asking me, how long are you going to do this for? And I was like, I'm just going to do this forever.
Yeah, it seemed like you didn't... I think I had the impression, did you really think this through? Did you really know what was going on and how this was...
I really thought it through. I was very inspired by Amy Porterfield's podcast. Yes. I remember she was in, she had a couple of 100 episodes, and I remember thinking like, wow, when you want to have 100 episodes, that means you kind of have to be doing this for 2 years. That's a really long time to hit that first milestone, which I hit a few weeks ago. And there I already talked about the journey and what I have learned, what I like that I did in the past 2 years, what I maybe could have done better. One of those is I am very proud of the fact that the podcast was there every single Tuesday. We haven't missed a single Tuesday, 7 a.m. It's always been there. Yeah. I also don't get it when people are not consistent. Like for me, that was very clear. Like if I'm doing this, I need to do it correctly. What I could have done better is focus more on the growth. But for the time being, I'm just so happy that we did this. And this kind of also, I personally never work with seasons in this podcast. It's just ongoing. It's a season of my life. I had a therapist a while ago, and she asked me, how do you process things? Do you write in a diary? I'm like, I make stories and podcasts. It's my diary. But this is the start of a new era of the podcast, because today we embark on a journey where in the upcoming weeks and months, 1 week is going to be just me, and 1 week is going to be a guest. And you are my first guest in a year, I think, on the podcast.
Didn't know that.
Yes, I also didn't tell you. I wanted to surprise you.
This is all cause for celebrations. Thank you very much. Cheers. This is your favorite red wine, or one of them?
Yeah, I'm amazed you're actually drinking from the glass.
Should I be drinking from the bottle? What do you want me to do? This is just a prop. I'm not supposed to drink this.
No, you can drink it.
All right.
It's fine.
Good.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so...
Must be.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, so I'm very happy to be here. This is episode 111. That also means the tips and tricks we will be sharing in this episode. You can find all of that through fastforwardamy.com/111. And you can also find the link in the description of this episode. And today also marks part 4, the last part of our success series. 3 weeks ago, I released an episode where we talked about money habits. Then we talked about productivity habits to wrap up the end of the year. Then we talked about health habits and my journey and how I turned my health around. And the episode is called How I Prioritized My Health and Stopped Lying to Myself. So all of those are really good episodes to help you kickstart the new year. But part 4, I wanted to keep for a recording with my dad to talk about business growth in the upcoming year. So that's what we're going to be doing today.
This is the time of year where we think about the upcoming year, where we start with great habits and we promise things to ourselves, and then it's up to us to keep our promises.
Yeah.
And you said, stop lying to myself. Why did you say that?
No, it's because in that episode I talked about how sometimes we don't realize what we are not doing, or we say we're doing
okay.
everything, but we kind of maybe aren't doing everything. I think that goes for business as well. I think people tend to say like, oh, I've done everything I could in order to make that happen, but maybe they didn't do everything they could.
No.
Before we go into that, maybe a short introduction. Who are you? Random dude sitting next to me.
I'm your dad.
Oh, amazing.
I am. My name is Vincent. I own a company. We specialize in e-learning. We call it rich media e-learning because it's much more than a standard webinar or than an animation you see. We really focus on convenience, on ease of use, on making sure that the learning models are being transferred to the learner. We have two separate business units. We have one focusing on food safety. We're a market leader in the food safety area. And also we have all kinds of mandatory trainings for lawyers, solicitors, bookkeepers, accountants, and so on. And that business was started 2.5, nearly 3 years ago now. And it's incredible. It's been booming. And I think we're probably number one there as well.
Amazing.
So it's going very well.
Yes, nice. And you also have a podcast on the side.
I do, yes. My daughter, Amy, when she was, I think it was, you were 1 year, your podcast was running for about 1 year.
Yeah, so last year.
Very soon now, I will be celebrating my first year. Not yet 200,000 downloads, but I have my own podcast, yes, the Business Dad podcast. And I think the whole idea came from what you said. Many people want to be an entrepreneur, many people want to do something, many people want to start a project or a company or a business or lead a team, and not everybody has this supportive environment. And I believe that your kick in the butt was like, you supported me, so you should be telling people who need some support in that arena, you should be telling them what they can do. So that's what I started doing. I enjoy it. I have a weekly podcast on every Monday morning, I should say. And I think I was consistent. No, I don't think. I'm pretty sure. Every week in the last year, we've had one podcast.
I love it. I can't believe it's been a year since we last sat here to announce your podcast and the first episode and all of that.
Were we here or in the kitchen?
No, it was here.
Here, yes.
It's incredible how time has flown. Flies.
Flighting. It's going. Yes, it's the flighting things.
Yeah. So that earlier we were talking about my new word, BAT. BAT comes from big ass target. It's something I've been talking about in the previous episodes. I'm kind of like done with vision and goals and dreams because I feel like those words have kind of lost their power. And I was thinking about big ass targets, BATs. It's really easy to remember for people. Setting a big ass target means that you actually need to hit it. I think goals have become this word where people are like, oh yeah, that's a goal and I can do goal setting. But a target kind of implies that you're going to hit it. It's like darts. You need to hit the targets. Like a shooting range, you're actually hitting the target instead of just talking about hitting the target. In these bets, we've talked about your productivity, how it can lead to that and everything. But as you are very successful and you've accomplished a lot in your life, I know you don't like me saying that, but I'm going to say it. And you've grown your business consistently and exponentially over these past few years. I would love to talk to you about business growth and mainly look at how can we make sure that our listeners have exponential growth in the upcoming year. And I know that comes from focusing on the bets, right? And putting the bets first, the biggest targets. But what do you think, first up, like, where do people go wrong, do you think, in trying to achieve their goals?
Well, I think people sometimes go wrong. First of all, let me say that I like the idea of moving from goals to targets. Targets is much harder. That's something you have to hit. Whereas a goal, it's already something with a built-in excuse that you're not going to get there. A little bit.
It's almost like a wish.
Yes, and a wish becomes something that you hope for. And it can also be, you pray, you hope, you wish, and you don't attain. And it's really something that you have to achieve.
A wish is something you hope for. A target is something you work for.
That's nice. Yeah.
It's a quote.
Yeah.
Looking to the marketing team now. It's a quote.
Anyway, so going back to the mistakes that I've made and that I see people make, Because you say my business has grown exponentially. I've had a long time in failure. I don't like the word failure. I prefer the word falling versus failing. Also there, it's a choice of words, not so important right now. But I think some of the mistakes people make, and that I recognize in myself, because I've made a lot of mistakes, is that people don't prioritize. And I know that's something people say now, the beginning of the year, you have to focus on the right priorities and so on. You know, and you are as well a strong believer in the 80-20, in prioritizing. And I believe that I hear so many people focusing their energy, a lot of energy, on the wrong stuff. And so I would encourage people to really think about what is the low-hanging fruit, what is the one thing that with pretty or with less effort can really create a big impact, can really make a big difference. So I am an 80-20 Pareto rule believer, strong believer. I use Pareto at least every day.
Mm-hmm. Give us an example of what you do with it.
Well, for instance, we have a lot of emailing campaigns. That's how we reach our accountants and lawyers and all these clients. And what we do there is really, we consistently focus on fine-tuning, on blueprinting, on making it better by looking at what is the open rate, what is the buy rate, and so on. And it's really thinking about what works, what is working with a little bit of effort and has a big impact. It's continuously looking at these lists, and these are Excel pages. You need two screens to really understand what's going on. It's consistently looking at what is working well, how can we do more of that, what's not working well, and how can we leave that behind. If I make a list of 10 things that we can do, my first reaction is, okay, what are the 2 things on this list that if I only do those 2 things will have an 80% impact on my results? And I believe that that's really something that's helped us grow exponentially. What has also helped me to grow exponentially is that I am an optimist. So in business results, I tend to be too optimistic. I tend to believe that things are going to be easier than they are in reality, and I tend to think that things will be achieved earlier than they are. So I read a book a long time ago, and it's about how you overestimate what happens in a short amount of time and you underestimate what you can do over a longer period of time. And so I think, in general, I have this 100-week calendar, mm-hmm. which is about 2 years. You can achieve most of the things that you want in life in 2 years. You can start from scratch and build a profitable business in 2 years. You can start from scratch and have a relationship and even have a child or a family within 2 years. You can start from scratch, not knowing where you want to live, buy a piece of land, build a house, and sit by the fire or sit sipping a glass of wine in your kitchen. All that is possible within 2 years. And overestimating it in the shorter term creates frustration, and that doesn't work. I wanted to pick up on something that you said, vision. I didn't really realize this, but if you talk about a target, that's also very visual. You can visualize the target. There is a reason why you need to visualize it. It has to do with chemical processes going on in your mind and in your body. One of the things that happens if you visualize a goal is it increases your dopamine levels. And dopamine, is something that gives you a good feeling. The more dopamine you have, the better feeling you will have. And dopamine comes from setting a goal and achieving it. And that's why I encourage you to make a list of things that you want to attain, results that you want to reach, and really make it very visual. And if once you reached one of those things on the list, you can check them off. Make it as visual as you can. Make your vision board, and it's for this upcoming year, or maybe the 2 years, the 100 weeks. Start by really thinking about what is it you want to achieve, and avoid thinking how you want to achieve that. So that's another mistake. I'm going down my mental list of things that I've done wrong, mm-hmm. and I see sometimes people could be better at.
I'm gonna pick up on that. Something that a lot of people will struggle with is like, okay, but what do I do? What is my 20-80? Mm-hmm. What are the tasks that you should be doing or the actions you should be taking? And I have a fun exercise about that. It's really simple. If you grab a piece of paper, you just draw a line in the middle, and on the left side you write your actions, on the right side you write your results from the past 2 years, for example, you can see that, like, write down your biggest results and then draw a line from where did those results, where did they come from? So you might have checking my email, being on social media, reading articles, going for coffee with friends, talking to people, meetings, phone calls, and then you can kind of reverse engineer from your results and draw a line and think of where did those results actually come from. And you will see, just like you said, when you have a list of 10 things, which are the 2 things that will get me to my goal, you can see which actions actually got you there, and that way you can also prioritize them.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like to start with the result, the end goal in mind, and start working back from there, reverse engineering it. I think I'm pretty good at really making a distinction between the 2 thought paths. If you think about results, I would encourage you to visualize them as strongly as you can, and to refrain from thinking about, yes, but this has never been done, so who am I to think that I can do it, or how should I be doing it? Or, oh, hold on, I don't have this. That's all how thinking. That's fine. You need to think in the how, but you need to distinguish the 2 thought patterns and really focus on what first, and then move to how. And
now, that is very... this conversation, so I'm going to interrupt and everything.
It's fine.
You can also ask me questions, Josh.
You're good.
When we look at the biggest targets, the thing I said 2 episodes ago is that one of the biggest reasons people never hit the targets is because they never knew what the targets were in the first place. You are very good at what thinking.
Yeah.
You also taught me, my brothers, that at an early age, although not for all of us. It's not normal for all of us from our character types. Just want to take a little sidetrack. If we look at insights or profiles of people, characteristics, what is your makeup in terms of...
Well,
you dislike talking about the colors, but let's have a
I don't
chat
like
about...
talking about the colors. You're referring to I'm red or I'm green, whatever. My typical personality trait, dominant personality trait, would be a driver, and that's easy because... it's easier for me to think in terms of what, because I don't care about the how. My thinking about I want to really focus on the what, it involves challenges. One of the challenges is to think about how am I going to get there. I love challenges because that's also my personality type. If you are more, if your personality involves more being very loyal to procedures, being very loyal to systems, being somebody who really follows the whole procedure from A to Z, then it is a lot more difficult for you to stay away from the how thinking, because we've been taught at school that you need to think in terms of how. That's the whole school education that you got. It's to think in terms of how. And still, I would encourage you to go through the exercise, even in meditation or even in daydreaming, or not even. I would encourage you to go to daydreaming. Think about what. And I've used the example of the Eiffel Tower in Paris in some of my podcasts, and I'd like to use it again. If Mr. Eiffel had thought about how am I going to get all this iron down the Seine River in Paris? How am I going to convince people to give me the authorization to build that thing? How am I going to get the financing and so on? If he had gone through all that, he would have found hundreds of reasons why not to build the Eiffel Tower. So that's another reason. Focus totally on the end goal, what? Visualize it, add stimuli, make it fun, try to see it from all possible angles, and then how has a way to figure itself out. The more powerful you make that vision, the more easy your brain will think about how, but distinguish the two patterns.
Can you give an example of a what, or a target, or something you might be working on right now?
Well, I've had some in the past year, in the rallies that we've been doing of driving. I think recognition is important. Being on the podium, being the number one was important. Although I also know that for me, doing the rally with you, the whole rally thing is more of an infinite game than a finite game. So the challenge with goals is that it very easily becomes a finite game. The visualization can be lots of stuff. It can be me sitting on my rowing machine, my water rower, and getting off the rowing machine, feeling pretty fit and not exhausted after I've done 20 kilometers. that can be a visualization. And
You've
then,
gotten a lot more fit over the past
Yes,
year or
I
the
have.
past 2 years. What changed?
I think one of those I mean the lockdown, the pandemic lockdown has helped. One of the good things that came out of that is that I focused on really being fitter. And the visualization for me was people that I look up to. And for instance, Sir Richard Branson, somebody that I look up to, who's a couple of years older than I am, a lot older than I am. He's still pretty fit. And so I
thought
think
you were going to say still pretty.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, so visualizing role models, just print out a picture of somebody who's very good at. That can be visualization. Another visualization could be seeing yourself in that new situation. Seeing yourself shaking hands with somebody who signed that deal with you. It's really using the creative side of your mind, of your brain, which is the right side of your brain, and use all your imagination to start building that visualization, that image, that picture of where you want to be. And the stronger you make it, the stronger it will attract you to get there, and the easier it will become to overcome the obstacles to get there. Because there will be obstacles, clearly. You won't be wanting to be on the rowing machine every day. And then if you focus on the end goal, it's like going on a trip. If you go on a trip, no, but honestly, if you go on a trip and you think about all the hassle that you have to go through before you get there, packing your bags, going to your car, finding a parking spot, making sure you're not stuck in a traffic jam, all that things that happen before you're really at the beach or in the mountains going skiing. All these things, if you focus on those, you will not enjoy your holiday. You probably won't even get there. The thing that makes you overcome all these obstacles is your image of drinking the pina colada on the beach.
So what's your image? Because the water rower, you're on there like 40 minutes every day. Is
More.
the process the thing you're doing? Because I know you're very much a what thinker and you don't focus on the process as much, but I feel like the rowing thing, do you have like a physique goal? Is it just being the person who who does the rowing?
It's
Because you've
it's a
been so
combination.
consistent. It's remarkable.
Yeah, but I believe in consistency, as you know. I think it's a combination. It also has to do with the chemicals in my head. Because if you are on a rowing machine, dopamine kicks in because I reach my goal. And I've been there, and so the dopamine level goes up.
So you're addicted.
No, because oxytocin is also pretty high in my body, and oxytocin would avoid or prevent you from being addicted. Anyway, regardless of these chemicals, I think it also it's 40 minutes, 50 minutes, sometimes it's an hour where I can really relax. I'm not sitting at my computer, I'm not writing things down, I'm not picking up my phone, I'm not reading messages, I'm not on social media, anything. I'm rowing. That's the only thing I can do. I watch a TED talk, or I watch maybe a movie or whatever. So it's also that moment for myself, because one of the things that I learned in the past year in the lockdown periods is by not driving to an appointment, by not having time between two appointments when you were sitting in your car and driving from one place to another, you actually work back to back the whole time. You have a Zoom meeting from, let's say, 8:30 to 9:30, and then you have to stop that Zoom meeting. Your next Zoom meeting starts, or whatever system you use, whatever app you use. So it's really back to back to back to back to back. And it may increase your productivity in the shorter term. At the same time, your brain doesn't have the time, or didn't get the time to really chill out, relax a little bit. And I think the rowing every day helps me. I start rowing in the morning, and I feel now for me my golden hours are later in the afternoon.
Okay. So, side note, we are in my studio in my home where we're recording. You record the Business Dad podcast here too. I've wondered for a while why my table always gets so unstable, but I notice now because you are just
Am I?
all over the table.
People tell me I use a lot of gestures.
A lot
Is
of
that,
gestures.
yeah? Okay.
Holy, wow.
Right. Sorry about that. I hope it didn't distract you.
I thought I use a
Yes.
lot of gestures. Something
And I'm
special.
really refraining myself. I'm really holding back. So anyway.
Okay. So we had what you said about short term versus long term, or what you can accomplish in 2 years, which is kind of like with the podcast. In half a year, you can only have like 25 podcast episodes, or 26 to be exact, if you publish one every week. But if you do it for 2 years, all of a sudden you have over 100 podcast episodes. You can achieve a lot. I do see that it's something that a lot of my clients struggle with. So a lot of clients with me, they sign up for a 6-month program. And I always tell them, like, chill, you're still working on it. Like, don't stress out if you haven't hit your targets yet. Because it even takes 9 months to create a baby. So it's going to take longer than 6 months to achieve your biggest, wildest dreams. 2 years is a good time frame.
Now that you say that, I've spoken to a lot of your clients who have achieved big-ass targets before the end of the program. So it is possible. It has a lot to do with mindset as well. I have a friend who is very good at trying to find perfect solutions for everything that he's doing. And I personally believe that for him, it's a fear of failure in disguise. And that doesn't really bother me. I am not too bothered about what happens if I don't reach my target. I actually don't think that way. And I think when you started with your podcast, you didn't think about what happens if and so on. You just started, and I'm pretty sure that you had a target in mind. And then it started happening, and you had this consistent effort that you put into it, a lot of energy. People started listening more and more. And then it starts working. The wheels get in motion. Yeah,
it's actually funny. I started the podcast because I wanted to create a space for myself where there was no end goal, where I could just be creative and just create. Mm-hmm. So I wanted something without pressure. But I also wanted 1 million downloads. And I just realized I'm now at about 20% of my target. And I now finally feel ready to make it grow exponentially. And I also feel like I've now covered my bases. Talked, like we said it with the marketing team a while back, like, okay, most of the things have been said now somewhere on the podcast. Now we can start inviting guests. We can start reusing content. But it's funny that I've now hit 20% of my target, but I didn't realize by the time I launched my first Business Freedom Elevator that the podcast would have such a huge effect on it. But 80% of my clients come from my podcast. So I knew gut feeling wise that it was the right thing to do, although almost no one really got why I was launching a podcast. But I'm really happy I did.
Yeah, and about the 20%, the 200K to 1 million, there is this compound effect that also works for your podcast, because you have more podcasts now. You have 2 years of content. Anybody who listens to one will probably want to listen to 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and so on. So your basis is becoming broader and broader, and you will accelerate because of this compound effect. You will accelerate your growth. And if you now focus on inviting very important and distinguished guests in your not like me, but really important people, then it will only grow faster. I'm absolutely convinced of that. The reason I said it about the short term and the long term is because it can be disappointing. You're optimistic. You think, oh, I'm going to do that in 3 months, and maybe it takes 2 years, and that's fine. That's really fine. That's one of the things that I've learned. It's to chill out a little bit more in regards to the target. The target in itself, I'm not going to bring that down, but maybe the desired timeline to get there, I'm a little bit more flexible than I used to be.
What's your quote about that? Deadlines are just...
Desired
timelines.
Desired timelines, yes. That's what I just said, didn't I? Yeah.
Yeah, in different words, but it's nice to put it in a quote, because then Amber can turn it into a quote on the feed.
Great, and she can make a coffee mug out of it. What I'm trying to say is, keep your target. Stay on the 1 million. You want 1 million downloads? Don't lower that. But your desired timeline...
Yeah, I thought I would have hit it by now.
Okay, so be flexible. Maybe it'll take you 8 months more, 9 months, 12 months, whatever. It's not that you have 2,000 today and that you need to go to 1 million. You have 200,000, that's 20%. You have the compound effect. You know what works, what doesn't work. You have the energy, you have your team, your whole staff is behind you. So I'm confident this is going to happen. Is it going to happen on November 25th of 2022? I don't know.
That would be great, because it's Mom's birthday the day after. So
yes.
That would be a great celebration.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot of things people don't do. We touched on a few of them. We also don't want to turn this into an episode that takes too long. But I have I want to know one key from you, and you might have already said it, but what I have experienced in the past year in growing my team and growing my businesses is that sometimes I get very caught up in doing the things, in talking to the people, in just being in it, making sure everything is moving. And with you, what I often see, and it's remarkable to me, and I know like we share a lot, we talk about a lot of things, we help each other out, but you always seem to be able to zoom out.
Tune out or zoom out?
Zoom out. You
Zoom
are
out,
very
yeah.
good at zooming out and then seeing one thing and then taking immediate action and turning into reality the next day. I'm guessing that's sometimes also very tiring for your brain.
I don't know if it's tiring for my brain. I think it's tiring for my team because I have a high sense of urgency and I can distinguish what I think is important from things that are not so important. Sometimes people are very good at a thing and they want to spend time on doing that thing, and that thing may not be what really impacts our results, and then I would ask them to consider looking at something else, focus on results. So I think one of the things that I've learned in life is to focus on results, is to focus on what really matters. And I have a good focus, and I can refocus my team. That's tiring because they with a lot of enthusiasm they would be doing something, and then it's my role, it's my responsibility, and I tell them, it's the way I tell them, it's listen, what I have to do now is to make us all understand that what we're doing now is not the most important thing that we should be doing now.
Yeah.
So focus is, I think, important, and focus on the results, and distinguish what from how.
Most of our listeners, 80% of our listeners, work by themselves. They're still starting out, or they are growing their business, scaling it up to 2,000 a month, 5,000 a month, 10,000 a month or more. How do you keep that focus when you're working by yourself? What is a golden tip you would give there?
By really, really making sure that you revisit your vision, your end goal that you have in mind, by revisiting it really, literally every day. I meditate every day for anything between 5 and 10, maybe sometimes 15 minutes.
Oh my God, we should record a voiceover for meditation from you.
Okay, anyway, I think that meditation, I do several things in that meditation, but one of the things I do is I revisit my visions. I don't have one vision. I revisit visions, and the vision can be a business target, it can be an overall vision, health-wise, it can be lots of things. And it's really revisiting that vision that creates the energy to overcome the obstacles and keeps you focused. Because sometimes you get bogged down by things. You have to, sometimes, I get mails, and then this client has a question about that, and then that team member has that, and so on. Everybody has that. If you work alone or you work with a team, you continuously have things that interrupt your plan, that interrupt your day. And it's up to you to think about what is most important. Do I need to do this right now? Or can I postpone it? Can I put it somewhere else? Sometimes, you know what? Sometimes I do the thing right now. Because I know if I'm going to postpone it, by the time I've written down in my calendar that I need to do that tomorrow, I can have done it today. So for me, one of the principles I use is if somebody asks me something and it takes me less than 60 seconds to do it now, I do it now. It doesn't interrupt my thinking.
But how do you get so much done? Because you're almost always available. I can almost always reach you. You reply to a lot of stuff really quickly. You do spend time on your phone. And yet you get so much done. It's 80-20.
I think it's 80-20, and you can reach me because you are important to me. Not everybody can reach me.
You're also important to me.
Thank you. But I'm not everybody can reach me. I don't always answer immediately. I don't always answer to everybody. I think some of your team members get pretty annoyed if they ask me a question. I need to read something, and I think, is this really important right now? Will it add any value if I say yes or no or this or that? I think time management, which is a terrible definition, by the way, because you can't manage time. The only thing that you can manage is how you use the time or how you deal with the time and your energy. I think it really has to do with prioritizing. If you look at the really great entrepreneurs, if you look at, and I don't want to start a whole discussion about whether they are environmentally sane or whatever, but if you look at Bezos, if you look at Musk, if you look at Steve Jobs when he was alive, if you look at anybody that is really an example in entrepreneurship, they all have an incredible good use of their time.
I feel like crap right now.
That's the way to start the year.
No, I'm actually very inspired. I think it's also something it's weird for me to put myself in a position like, hey, can I learn from you? I never want someone listening to the podcast to think like, oh, Amy doesn't know shit. But what I do want to accomplish with this podcast is always show the real and raw. And I think we all go through seasons. We go through seasons of being more focused, of being more productive,
Absolutely.
of being less focused, less productive. During winter, for example, I need more sleep, like the animals. I am a tiny baby that needs to sleep more. And I think the real and raw of the Fast Forward Amy show and why we've been here for 2 years now is actually talking about the stuff like, oh yeah, I think that is difficult. I think refocusing, like I get a lot done, but sometimes like, am I focused? Am I getting too distracted by other people? Definitely. Just like we all have that. And I want someone who's listening to also hear me say like, wow, okay, I need to change some stuff. I really need to start my day differently.
Yeah, but to make it very clear, my life, professional and personal life, is not always in the right flow. Like everybody, I have these weeks where I think, oh, this has gone really well. I'm doing the things I need to do. I feel good about what I'm doing. I'm reaching my goals and so on. And then for some reason, something happens. Sometimes it's a holiday. I go on a holiday and then my flow gets disrupted.
Yeah, sometimes
and then
we
I
drink
need
a lot
to...
of wine when we are...
Yes, you do. And
we.
I watch you drink wine. Hey. So what happens is if I get out of the flow, I need to get back into the flow as quickly as possible. What I do with that is all the stimuli that I have that put me in that flow, I re-engage with these stimuli. One of the things I do is every morning I put on the same music. Every single morning I go in the office, put on my iPad, I put on the Bluetooth speaker, and it's the same song that starts. It starts my head getting into the flow. That's one of the stimuli. I put on the same lights. I do the same things, and I know you can say maybe I have OCD, maybe I do, maybe I don't. That's not important. But it's bringing me in that flow where I was successful yesterday. It brings me back into that flow. If I go on holiday or if I'm in another location, I'm not in that flow, and I need as much stimuli as I can get to get back in the flow. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I do the same thing. I've created an environment that supports me like that. Same things at the same time and everything. And I also have a running joke with my clients whenever we co-work in a session or whenever I need to get anything done, I turn on the same album from the same person. I've been doing this since university for years now. It's Selena Gomez's Revival album. And I still, like, they'll be in a meeting with me, like, I need to do this thing. It's like, okay, Selena, let's go. When I prep podcast episodes, the final 10 minutes before we start recording, I turn on Selena Gomez.
Crazy?
Selena, please come on my podcast. If I hit 1 million downloads, will Selena come on the podcast?
You can ask her earlier and then you'll hit your 1 million even faster.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to share, I don't know if we still have time, but I used to make lists every day of the things that I have to do the next day. I used to do that. I stopped doing that about 3 years ago.
No lists?
I sometimes make a list. I have a very clear list of goals. I fill in my calendar the things that I have to do. And it's a bit of a contradiction because that's the way I started way back then when I made all those mistakes. Then I left that behind. I started working with the list and then finding my 80% and so on. Now I focus on my visions, short-term visions, longer-term visions, bigger goals, smaller goals or targets, whatever you want to call them. And it's like the action follows out of it. I don't write down my actions anymore.
It sounds so much like something Jessica would do. I'm also going to start doing this right now. Do they never... Because if I would do that, when I do that after this podcast...
You like lists, I know.
Yeah, I love... No, but I don't even make lists anymore. Like, I'm just doing.
Yeah.
Do you not get overwhelmed by the magnitude of those goals?
If I get overwhelmed, and it happens about 2 or 3 times a month, I make a mind map. And that mind map helps me to prioritize. I don't know if how much your listeners are familiar with mind maps. I make a manual mind map. I use the colors and the markers and so on. And it creates something in my head. My subconscious mind really kicks in and says, okay, that's good. You've put everything into place. I feel calmer. I notice that my breathing is better and so on. And it's like, it's organizing the energy that I have to give to the various goals or targets that I have in place. Yeah,
it's funny. I do the same but with whiteboards.
Yeah.
I write it on a really big whiteboard. And I've noticed that although I am really good visually, it's more about like actually doing the movements for me and like, making sure everything like flows through my brain, and then it's out there and I'm happy.
Also, that's a stimulus.
Yeah.
It brings you back into that flow that we mentioned earlier.
So inspired. Such a great first year.
The reason
episode.
why I'm such a strong believer in the mind map is because it involves your two brain hemispheres. It really makes, if you make a good mind map, that's why I'm not such a big fan of the apps and so on. A good mind map really involves left brain, which is the logical brain, and your right brain, which is more your creative brain. So that's why if you make a mind map, make little drawings, make doodles and so on, that's the right brain that kicks in. And the right brain and the left brain together, there is nothing more powerful.
Do you think you could give a course on how to mind map?
Sure.
I would buy that from you.
Okay. How much would you pay?
$5 billion.
That's good. My banker will call me and say, you have to open another bank account because the one is full.
Is this from Family Guy or
Yes,
where does this joke come from? Yeah. Sorry, family joke, inside joke.
Yes, inside joke, Family Guy.
Okay, Dad, I think we've given enough ammunition for anyone who is listening to conclude this 4-part series on success habits for the upcoming year. And it also means if you want to work on your success habits and you want to achieve that business growth and personal growth in the upcoming year, you can go ahead and download my workbook. You can find it through fastforwardamy.com/success habits, and we'll include a page where you can mind map some blank space for you to just like doodle. And maybe that mind map course is something we need to look at. What is one thing you would like to say to someone who wants to make this their best year yet? Because I'm a firm believer you can achieve anything you want. That's the whole goal of this podcast, this episode. You can achieve anything you want. What if people want to achieve more than they've ever achieved before this upcoming year? One quote, one lesson you want to share.
I don't know if it's a quote. Well, it's not a quote. It's to sincerely, genuinely believe that you can decide to be different than the person that you were. So don't be bogged down by the failures that you've had. Don't be bogged down by the things that you tried and it didn't. You can decide right now, you are not who you were. You can become somebody else. And if you focus on that and focus on now and the future and not on the past, you've got everything you need to be more successful this year than you've ever were.
Thank you, Daddy. And for anyone listening, also just pulled up my shirt. Hope you didn't see that. If you are looking for that accountability, for that way to stay focused in our Business Freedom Elevator, we have monthly focus and goal sessions. And there's a reason, because when you stay focused, you get those results. So if you're interested in that, we're soon opening up the pre-order of our program. It's very special because we only have limited spots, only 100 spots at a €500 discount if you want to join that life and business changing program. So make sure you're on the wait list because it's going to open soon. And last time we sold out the first 50 spots in 15 minutes. The link is linked up in the description. The link is fastforwardamy.com/elevator, and I would love to see you there.